My ex-wife lost everything after cheating, no job, no money, no family. She begs me for help, but karma is ruthless. My cheating ex-wife is now broke, jobless, and drowning in debt, all while karma slowly ruins her life. We're both 42, been together since we were 17. For the longest time, everything seemed fine. I work nights, and she's on a day shift now, in a field where she's surrounded by men. Yeah, there's some female support staff around, people in the office, parts rooms, whatever. But lately, I've noticed her hanging around with her male coworkers more and more. It's like she's drifting into their world, a place she never had access to until recently. That's when I felt it. Something was off. She started this new career just a few years ago, and honestly, a workplace affair never really crossed my mind back then. But now, every day, it feels like I'm living in a fog of suspicion. Lately, she's been staying out late, real late. She gets off work around 5 p.m., but she doesn't roll into the house until 7 or 8, sometimes even later. Couple of times, she didn't come home at all. She claimed she was out with her female coworkers, having drinks, and passed out on their couch. That's the kind of story that might have made sense before, but for her, she's always been so responsible, never one to get carried away in social situations. My gut twisted with doubt, but I didn't say anything. Yet, then came the night I wasn't scheduled to work. It was the first time in weeks I'd gone to bed at a normal hour. I'm a light sleeper, so when I felt the glow of her phone screen in the middle of the night, around 3 a.m., it woke me instantly. She was lying right next to me, scrolling through something. I couldn't tell if she was texting or browsing, and she wasn't being overly secretive. No angling the screen away from me or anything. But something about it felt wrong. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She got out of bed and started getting ready for work at 3 a.m. Her shift doesn't start until 8. I sat up, trying to process what I was seeing. I asked her, "Doesn't your shift start at 8? She acknowledged it, but casually threw out some story about going for a walk with her coworkers before work. A walk? In the dead of night, when it's pitch black outside and raining. She's a diesel mechanic, for crying out loud, and she seemed way too cleaned up for something like that. Not dolled up, but too put together. My gut was screaming. She left the house at 4 a.m. sharp, and I watched her headlights fade into the wet, cold darkness. I couldn't shake the feeling. Who goes for a walk at that hour? Who needs to? The streets were slick with rain, and it was barely 45 degrees outside. No one in Arizona even owns a raincoat, let alone goes for a casual stroll in a downpour. Around 5 a.m., I texted her, asking if I could use the truck to haul some stuff to the dump. No response. 15 minutes later, I called. She picked up, sounding a little too breathless for my comfort. "We're still out walking," she said, but told me I could swing by her work later to grab the truck if I needed it. Her tone was too casual, too relaxed for someone who had supposedly been wandering around in the rain for the last hour. That's when the paranoia hit me like a freight train. My mind started racing, thinking of every possible excuse, every little detail that didn't add up. Was her hair damp when she left? Would it be when I saw her next? Was this all some intricate lie? I tried to calm myself, but the nagging voice in my head wouldn't shut up. Maybe I was overthinking things, or maybe I was right. Maybe she was hiding something big. When she got home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I confronted her, demanding to see her phone. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tried to flip it around on me, asking for mine in return. Without hesitation, I handed it over, unlocked. I had nothing to hide. Hell, I didn't even have time to meet other people, let alone cheat. But when I got to her phone, my worst fears were realized. The one conversation I needed to see, the one that would explain it all, was gone. Just vanished like it never existed. My stomach dropped. She tried to brush it off, but I could feel the tension rising, crawling into the corners of our home like a dark, suffocating presence. Something was very, very wrong. I typed in the number, and just like I feared, her boyfriend's name popped up. I felt my stomach drop, but I handed her the phone anyway. "I want to see the texts with him," I said, my voice cold. She acted shocked, but I cut her off, telling her what I already knew. how she'd texted him right before she left today and when she got back. How she wasn't in Vegas like she claimed, but with him the whole time. Her face was a mask of confusion, pretending she didn't know why our phone carrier had pages and pages of texts between the two of them. But she didn't fight it. She didn't even try to explain. Instead, she just stormed off, heading upstairs like a coward, retreating to the bed like none of this was happening. I followed her up, standing in the doorway, looking at the life we'd built, or what I thought we had. "I'm packing a bag," I told her, my voice barely above a whisper but heavy with finality. "I'm leaving," and I did. Packed up what I needed and walked out, feeling the cold bite of betrayal sinking deeper into my skin. Trust. It's funny how quickly it shatters when the lies start piling up. I had my suspicions, but deep down I wanted to believe I was wrong. Turns out I wasn't. Every shift in her behavior, every odd moment of distance, it wasn't in my head. It was real, and now I had proof. The whole drive away, I kept replaying the confrontation, wishing I'd handled it differently. But who's ever ready for something like that? Later, I talked to a police investigator, someone who'd seen this stuff play out more times than I could count. He told me something that hit hard. People rarely confess, even when they're caught. If they do, they only admit to a fraction of what they've done. So even if she said it was just a one-time mistake, I knew better. I knew there was more. "Forget getting a full confession," he said. "By the time you're confronting someone, you're just trying to collect more ammo for later. Play it smart. Start with 'I know more than you think I know,' and don't show all your cards." His words stuck with me. This wasn't just a gut feeling anymore. This was a game, a high-stakes one, where every move counted. He warned me that if I went through her phone, I'd probably find nothing. Cheaters hide their tracks well, especially when they know their time is running out. But the absence of evidence is still evidence. Deleted texts, missing call logs, it's all part of the puzzle. "Download the phone records from your service provider," he said. "Look at the gaps, the times when they weren't texting. That's when they were together. Piece it together, because rarely will you have undeniable proof. You need to make them believe you know it all, even when you don't." When I asked her for her phone, I wasn't surprised when she snapped back, accusing me in return. "I don't even know your password," she shouted, deflecting, trying to put me on the defensive. But I was ready for that. The guilty always fear being found out, more worried about what you've seen than what they've done. It's a twisted kind of fear, watching them scramble, knowing the walls are closing in, even if they're still trying to pretend they're innocent. She was more interested in watching me scroll through my phone than actually going through it herself. That was the first red flag. My wife barely glanced at the text lists, didn't even bother with the pictures, where most guys might hide something. She kept her eyes fixed on the phone in my hand, waiting for a slip-up as I flipped through innocent conversations. "See? I don't know what you think I'm doing," she muttered, like this whole thing was some misunderstanding. I wasn't buying it. So, I pulled up the phone app, typed in his number, and hit the text icon. Nothing. No messages. Big shocker, right? I went back to his contact, turned the screen towards her, and asked, "Where are his texts?" She didn't even flinch. "We don't talk that much," she said, trying to act clueless. But I wasn't going to let her off that easy. I called her bluff. "Last month alone, you had over 900 texts with him. Where are they?" She looked stunned for a second, but I could see her calculating. She knew that number was probably spot on. After a pause, she admitted to deleting them. Partial truth, right? Always just a sliver. She claimed they were only talking about how she wanted a divorce, but she wasn't ready to tell me yet. Convenient. Too convenient. The investigator's advice echoed in my head. Don't give away too much of what you know. Let them think you've got it all figured out. The number of texts was my trump card, a hard fact she couldn't argue. That hit home. It told her I wasn't some fool stumbling around in the dark. I knew things more than she realized, and that scared her. This is how the guilty act. They dodge, they deflect, they stall. Expect them to drop breadcrumbs like where they went or who they were with, but never the full story. If the details are vague and sound like they're pulling things out of thin air, you've got to press harder. Their lies are sloppy, barely thought out. Maybe she can tell me they went to a bar, but she wouldn't have any real details, who almost got into a fight, who was playing darts, the stuff that makes a real night out memorable. People who have nothing to hide share stories like that freely. But the guilty, they just want to explain themselves, justify everything, make sure you buy it. So I kept pushing. She knew this confrontation was coming. They always do, and they start planning their excuses well in advance, rehearsing how they'd act like an innocent person. They might even try to throw some light on themselves just to stay ahead. My adult daughter ended up calling, accusing my wife before I even had a chance. She called me after 2 reasons behind it. First, to steer the conversation, to set the tone before I could hear it from anyone else. She was already maneuvering, trying to control how this all played out. The guilty always try to dance in the light just enough, thinking if they show a little transparency, they can keep the worst of the shadows hidden. I should have seen that coming. When my daughter called, accusing my wife first, I didn't even question why she'd think that. I didn't ask for details, didn't dig into what exactly my daughter had seen or heard. I should have called her myself, gotten the full story. But I didn't. Here's the thing, if your spouse is innocent, they'd be grateful for the chance to explain, to clear their name. They'd probably even want to give you more details than you asked for because they'd have nothing to hide. They wouldn't feel the need to rehearse their answers, wouldn't be defensive. An innocent person might be annoyed, sure, because of that small expectation of privacy in a relationship. But they wouldn't fight you on it. They'd hand over the phone, confused more than angry. The guilty, though, they're always ready with just enough of the truth to make their story plausible. Take my wife, for example. She told me she went to the tattoo shop to get sketches done. But here's the thing. She didn't come home with any sketches. No pictures, no real details about what she had in mind, just some generic images she pulled from the internet. I knew her appointment was at 1 o'clock, but she left the house at 11:30. The shop was only a 45-minute drive away. She didn't come home until 6 o'clock. Something was off. Now, I don't doubt she went to the tattoo parlor, but what happened before and after? That's the real question. I'm convinced she went to his house first, spent some time with him. Maybe they even went to the tattoo shop together. She probably got an appointment card for a future visit, a perfect future alibi. Then they likely had lunch, maybe went back to his place, did what they do, and then she came home like nothing happened. That evening was when I confronted her. She was quick to explain the long day away, traffic, she said. Claimed it was really bad. But when I asked about details, like what kind of accident it was, she had nothing. If you're stuck in traffic for hours because of a crash, you remember the details. You remember seeing that flipped blue Honda or the fire truck blocking the lanes. But she gave me nothing. She also mentioned running an errand to Home Depot, looking for a lifting strap and some rings. Funny thing was, she came home empty-handed. It didn't sit right with me. This is what they do. Just because they can technically prove where they were doesn't mean they can explain all the gaps in time. She gave vague excuses, hoping I wouldn't notice the cracks. But the cracks were there. The investigator drilled this into my head. Don't expect their story to cover everything. Even when they can prove some of their whereabouts, the devil's in the details they can't account for. My wife said traffic was bad, but she had no clue about the crash itself. She claimed she was looking for something at Home Depot but left with nothing. Empty errands and empty explanations. Classic signs of a guilty conscience. There's more the investigator taught me, things that helped me keep my cool when I wanted to blow up. But it's hard to remember everything right now. I'll update if more comes to mind. What matters is this: patience and strategy are your best weapons when dealing with betrayal. One thing that stood out from this whole mess is how differently innocent and guilty people act during a confrontation. The guilty dodge and weave, hiding behind half-truths and excuses, while the innocent want to prove themselves, no matter the cost. It's a crucial difference most people don't notice until it's too late. At the end of the day, I did everything I could. I was methodical, careful. I gathered the evidence I needed without blowing up or tipping my hand too early. This isn't a reflection of who I am, but it's sure as hell a reflection of who she is. And now all I can do is move forward. There are probably a lot of people going through something similar, and sharing this story might be helping folks I don't even realize. Update. She's still with him, and honestly, I doubt things are going to work out between us. I've come to terms with the fact that my anger issues are what ultimately drove her away, and I've actually made some solid progress in dealing with that. She's never admitted to the affair, but I've decided I can forgive her for it, especially knowing how I contributed to our problems. She told me there's no hope for us getting back together and suggested we keep living under the same roof for the kids' sake. At first, I was hopeful, thinking maybe, just maybe, we'd reconcile down the line. But I can't shake the feeling that her offer to cohabitate was more about fear than anything else. So, I put the idea of divorce on the table, telling her I'd go through with it if that's really what she wanted. She hasn't brought it up since, and I took that as a sign that maybe, deep down, she doesn't actually want to end things. Maybe, just maybe, she's starting to soften a bit. Last night, we even took the kids out for dinner. She was nice, actually made conversation, and even looked me in the eye while we talked. For a moment, I thought the ice around her heart might be thawing. But then, on the drive home, she made a little jab at me. It felt like a reminder to herself that she doesn't love me anymore. And this morning, she was gone. I knew exactly where she was, though she didn't know I knew. I've been to his place before and taken pictures of her truck parked nearby. I'm not sure why I even bothered, maybe to gauge where she's at emotionally. When I got there today, his truck was in the driveway, but hers was tucked around the corner. She had no idea I was there. She texted me, casually asking if we needed anything like garbage bags. I played along, told her we were running low, and then asked if she was at the store. If she was, I told her to grab some coffee creamer while she was at it, pretending to believe her. I didn't get a reply for a bit, but then I saw him leave. Her truck was still there, but soon after, she drove off too. I rang the doorbell at his place, no answer. I sent her a text, asking if she'd seen the email I mentioned earlier. She claimed she hadn't, so I told her what it was about, and she said we'd talk about it when she got back. She texted me that she was at Costco, but I knew that wasn't true. I called her out on it. About 45 minutes later, she sent me a picture of the Costco building, as if she just arrived and was covering her tracks. I told her to send me a picture of her truck if she really wanted me to believe she was there. She replied that she honestly didn't care what I thought anymore. I texted back, "You're a good person. I know you're just trying to protect me from more pain, or maybe you're still afraid of me, and I'm sorry if that's the case. But at this point, the lies hurt more than the truth." She sent me a selfie from inside Costco, and I haven't responded since. I'm conflicted. I've walked out on her and the kids so many times before, and I don't want to do that again. At this point, I'm finally ready to move on. But staying here means living with someone I still love, even though she's lying to me. Either to protect me or because she's scared of how I'll react. Either way, it's not healthy for anyone. Update. I met with a lawyer yesterday, and there's been a lot going on since then. My therapist talked me into holding off on making any big decisions while my emotions are still running high. So I took his advice and decided to wait. Meanwhile, my wife and I are still cohabitating for the kids. Yeah, I know. I'm basically paying for a roof over my soon-to-be ex-wife's head while she's out running around with this guy. She even has a separate group chat with the kids, telling them things like she's out with her friend Maria getting drinks at 4 a.m., even though she has to be at work in a few hours. The bars aren't even open at that time. My youngest, who's high-functioning autistic, has started looking up things like bar hours and gym times, so they're catching on to her lies. She can lie to me all day long, but now she's screwing things up with the kids. That really gets to me. After a couple of solid nights of sleep, though, I've stopped obsessing over her. I had that lawyer consultation, and here's where things stand. If we split custody evenly, child support would only be about $40 a month. She doesn't want to sell the family home, and there's no way she could afford to buy me out, let alone cover the mortgage by herself. But the lawyer made it clear that if I want to sell the house, then it's getting sold. So, I'm in a bit of a power position here. I've got more savings than she does, and while that's at risk of being divided up, some things like my 401k and company stock aren't vested yet. The lawyer said that's a valid reason for them not to be split because they're not fully guaranteed. I can protect those assets by using the house as leverage. Basically, if I agree to keep paying half the mortgage until the kids are grown, in about 5 years, I could negotiate to keep half of the future equity, using that as a trade-off to protect my savings. It would turn into more of a real estate transaction at that point. As for my personal life, I've managed to avoid cracking under the pressure of sleep deprivation and the emotional roller coaster of trying to reconcile with my wife. What some people call doing the pick-me dance. About 2 weeks ago, I actually had to leave work because I couldn't function. I was just too drained. I prayed that when I got home, her truck would still be there, and that maybe, just maybe, God would put a little love back in her heart for me. I tried to talk to her, but it was pretty pathetic. I felt like my prayers went unanswered. Fast forward to last Sunday. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I told her I'd stay out of the house until I had to go back to work, giving her time to see the kids without me around. She bought them pizza, hung out for a little bit, and then took off again soon after. I ended up sitting in my car, scrolling through this forum and others, just trying to make sense of everything. I don't really know why, but one night I found myself downloading Tinder. Instead of setting up a profile, I was just mindlessly scrolling through, swiping left on everything. Eventually, I matched with someone, though I didn't feel much of anything when we talked. The next morning, after work, I swiped right on another profile. Not sure why, but it was an instant match. She messaged me with, "Hello, handsome." I've got to say, hearing something kind like that couldn't have come at a better time. We started chatting, and it went surprisingly well. By Tuesday night, we had what I guess you could call a date. Just a couple of drinks. I was upfront with her about my situation. On the off chance this could lead anywhere, I wasn't about to start it off with a lie. She'd been through it too. Cheated on and divorced for a while, but ready to date again. I walked her to her car and we kissed. Mind you, my wife ended the marriage, so all we've got left is a legal document at this point. I'm not going to lie. Thinking about this new woman and having a little hope again has been calming. It's helped me sleep. Maybe it's God's mercy, answering my prayers in a different way. Instead of fixing things with my wife, He sent someone to show me that I can still be valued. For the first time in a long time, I've got some hope for my future. It would be nice if this new thing went somewhere, but even if it's just a fleeting moment, I'm still grateful for it. Yeah, I know it all sounds fast, but my marriage had been in trouble for years. I'd thought about divorce many times, but I never did anything about it. I didn't try to save the marriage either. Her affair was the final push we needed to end things, and maybe that's what had to happen because neither of us was happy, and neither of us was ready to end it on our own. I've wondered if I would have failed if I were the one being tested. I've always kept my distance around other women just to avoid that risk. The happy memories with my wife feel so distant now. It's kind of like when someone who's been terminally ill finally passes away. You grieve the loss, but acceptance comes faster because you've been preparing for it. Update. I paid the retainer today. Yep, I've officially started the divorce process, and it looks like cohabitation will be ending soon. My oldest son, who's 23, and I are planning to find a place together as roommates. He's not speaking to his mom right now because of her cheating on me. I'm looking to sell the house and get my share of the equity. She doesn't want to sell, but the reality is she can't afford the payments and won't get enough in the divorce to buy me out. It cost me $2,500 to get things rolling. Ouch, but it'll be worth it. I've got day trading as a hobby, and I'm good at it, so I'll have more money to make bigger moves once this is over. Also, I've always wanted a 1979 Fiat Spider convertible. I could never justify it as a responsible married man, but now, I don't have to justify it to anyone. When this is all said and done, I'm getting that car. I'm going to be driving around in the car I've wanted for years, and I'm really hoping the vanity plate Spearman is available when I finally get it. When I walked out of the lawyer's office today, I had, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangsta," playing in my head. Now, I can't help but wonder how my wife is going to react when she's served those papers and sees I'm pushing to sell the house. The funny thing is, we'd both walk away with enough cash to get our own places. She can move him in and I can do my own thing, too. Seems like a win-win, but we'll see how it plays out. Update. The wife is returning her truck to the bank. Looks like things are starting to unravel for her a bit. She's been texting me casually, trying to act like everything's normal, but I've been sticking to the gray rock approach, basically just ignoring her most of the time. She texted me about some evaporative coolers at Home Depot, reminding me how we tried to get one when they were on sale last winter. Then she asked when I was coming home. We're still cohabitating in separate rooms. And even told me to have fun taking the kids to the water park tomorrow. Side note, water parks are mom central, tons of single, divorced moms around. Just saying. Anyway, today she hit me with a text saying she's going to turn in her 2019 Ram truck because of the $730 payment. This means our oldest will have to stop driving the old car we have, 220,000 miles on it, but at least it's paid off. I'm not going to lie, it feels a bit satisfying to see her making sacrifices for her choices. I also had a long talk with my sister. She told me that the guy my wife is with has been through 4 failed marriages already. According to her, he has a pattern. Latches onto women, drains their money, then moves on. Whether that's true or not, I couldn't say, but I hope he pushes her to settle up the divorce quickly. I'm just hoping they don't break up until I've got that divorce paper in my hand and I've fully moved on. Edit. Just had another conversation with her. She's planning to return the truck because she wants to refinance the house, and she can't afford to do a cash-out refi and pay off the truck at the same time. This actually fits perfectly with my plan. I want off the house anyway. She knows I've been looking for another place and don't plan on sticking around to pay half the bills while she's out doing her thing. I told her that I was fine with her keeping the house, but I need to be bought out. I've got other liquid assets she'd have to give up claiming in order to do that. She's still short on cash, but the amount is relatively small for me. It's just the cost of making a quick exit. I want to get this sorted while she's still in an agreeable mood. The longer this drags on, the more likely it is she'll start questioning an equitable split. She wasn't thrilled about not getting any part of my liquid assets, but I made it clear. She'd have 100% of the house and could do whatever she wants with it. She could stay until the kids are grown, sell it, or even move her boyfriend in if that's what she chooses. At the end of the day, I just want out, and this seems like the cleanest way to do it. I've still got my guard up, even though things are moving forward. It's clear that your emotions are still running high, with plenty of anger and hurt, but I've got to say, the calm and clear-headed way you're handling the legal and financial side of things is a really good sign. You're navigating this tough time better than you might think. I'm rooting for you, and I truly hope things start to turn around soon. On a side note, I really admire the fact that you've been able to own up to your mistakes and work on yourself. That's not something many people can do, and it'll serve you well moving forward. Keep going, you've got this. Update. Tomorrow, I get the keys to my new house, and I'll also be signing affidavits with my lawyer to move the divorce forward. If you've been following my story, you know my soon-to-be ex-wife of 19 years had an exit affair, which I found out about in March. I did the whole pick-me dance for a while, but after some time in counseling, I realized my life is actually going to be better without her in it. I found a rental house that's within walking distance of our current home, so the kids, 13M and 14M, can come and go as they please. I've even switched shifts at work so I can get them to and from school more easily. Tomorrow I'll get the keys and officially move in. I've already had the utilities turned on, so everything's set. Financially, I'm stable enough to start over, which is a relief. I'll also be meeting with my lawyer soon to sign the affidavits for the divorce paperwork. My soon-to-be ex and I have come to an agreement via email, and the lawyer will base the paperwork on that, so hopefully we can sign everything soon and just wait out the mandatory waiting period. If all goes well, I might have the divorce finalized by late June or early July. I'm getting a little less than half of our assets, but honestly, if that's the price for my sanity, I'll gladly pay it. I've also got some restricted stock units from work that haven't vested yet, and the agreement includes her forfeiting any future claim to those. So, if I stay at my job, those shares could be worth a lot down the road. I have no plans to leave because my company has been incredibly supportive through all of this. They even gave me a 30-day leave of absence, including short-term disability, which I wasn't expecting. This whole experience has made me even more loyal to them. As for spousal maintenance, I won't have to pay any since she has a decent job that pays well above the poverty line. With equal custody and the fact that I cover the health, dental, and vision insurance for the kids, my child support is only $42 a month, and even that is something we're negotiating to remove. I'll be paying for less than 5 years anyway. Looking ahead, I'm hopeful. In 5 years, when the kids are grown, I might have enough saved up to retire abroad at 47, instead of working here in the US until I'm 70. As a married man, I felt financially trapped, constantly pouring money into huge houses and material things I didn't even want. Now, I can focus on what I really care about and finally live life on my own terms. You could say that living on the other side of the planet from her would be a fringe benefit in itself. As far as relationships go, she may have broken my heart, but she's not taking it with her. There's someone out there who I'll trust it to, even if it means being vulnerable again. Love and hope are the greatest things, and no cheating spouse should ever be allowed to take those from you. Around here, we don't dwell on the past for too long. We keep moving forward, opening new doors and trying new things. Like Walt Disney said, curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Update. I'm moving on, crossing things off my bucket list, and in a few hours, I'll be traveling abroad. I've taken the whole month of July off work, and I'm heading to Thailand. I think the key to being single again is rediscovering the version of yourself you've neglected. Right now, I'm all about adding new experiences to my life. When my soon-to-be ex texts me, I reply if I feel like it, and sometimes not for days. The divorce is still in the works, but all the financials and assets are sorted out. Now we just have to figure out custody and child support. My lawyer said her proposal was ridiculous, no judge would even consider it, so instead of tweaking her offer, we're starting from scratch. My proposal is simple. The kids are old enough to decide for themselves where they want to be. Plus, I'm just a short walk away from her house. She moved her new guy in right after I moved out, and honestly, it doesn't bother me. It's almost funny how cliché it all is. As for my trip, yep, there's a girl involved. She knows my situation, and we talk all the time online. When I lose sleep these days, it's not because of a cheating ex. It's because there's a 14-hour time difference between me and this Thai girl. My advice for anyone still struggling through a breakup: just keep moving forward. Update. I'm officially divorced and moving on. Long story short, my divorce is final. I left after my wife's exit affair, and while custody and child support didn't go exactly how I'd hoped, I realized that a best-case scenario was just that, best case. I did get her to agree that half of the child support would go into 529 college savings plans for our boys. They're teenagers now, so when she pushed for alternate weekends only, I figured they're mostly grown anyway, with only a few big milestones left. This arrangement also means she has to handle all the school transportation, which worked out for me. It allowed me to take on a travel position at work, where I can rack up about 15 hours of overtime each week with meals covered. Luckily, overtime isn't factored into child support here, so that's a win for me. I've also updated my insurance at work, removing her from the policy, which is saving me even more money. She'll have to rely on her own work policy now, and for all I know, it might cost her more than she expected. All in all, I'm finally moving forward, and it feels good to be free from the past. On top of everything, I found out my ex has breast lumps. I couldn't help but think, karma, for letting another guy mess with her. I also made sure to update my life insurance so she won't benefit from that anymore either. I saw her the other day when I gave her some money for one of the boys' medical needs. I didn't feel a thing, no anger, no sadness. Honestly, I'm out here living my best life, and I don't need any dark clouds hanging over me. For those of you just starting this hellish journey, keep moving. Don't stop or the devil will catch up. I had my sleepless nights, begged for her back in the beginning, and even took time off work. But let me tell you this, you will survive. Just keep pushing forward. Update. Karma's starting to roll the dice. I've always believed that justice eventually catches up with people and they get what they deserve. Well, turns out she recently got fired from her job. Fitting, since that's where she met the guy she had the affair with. From what I heard, she reported a coworker for harassing her, but they fired her instead. Maybe they figured she was the one causing the trouble. After all, she's already wrecked 2 marriages, and her affair partner was married too. Now, she's jobless, buried in debt from her truck, and can't afford to keep the house she wanted to hold on to. She can't even afford movers because of her bad back, and her boyfriend's too old to help. The crazy thing is, I actually know of a job that would pay better than what she had before, with better benefits too. Part of me feels like passing that info along, but honestly, the other part of me just wants to sit back with some popcorn and watch it all unfold. My therapist told me a while back that it's not my responsibility to save her. So yeah, extra butter on that popcorn it is. The way things are playing out with her really does feel like karma doing its thing. It's bittersweet watching her life fall apart. But like I said, it's not my job to rescue her anymore. She made her choices, and now she's got to live with the consequences. For those of you in similar situations, I hope my experiences and outlook can help. Like that Walt Disney quote I shared, it's all about keeping on, moving forward, and finding new paths. And don't forget the extra butter. Community reaction. Promo 1 says, be ready in case she comes crawling back. Don't take her back. I'm choosing the popcorn route too. Your therapist is right. It's not your job to save her. OP replies, I used to think it was my job to solve all her problems, so that's something I've had to keep an eye on. She still sends those little reach-out texts, like, hey, I found something you left behind. What should I do with it? At this point, I've decided if I'm not legally required to respond, I just don't. Keeps things a lot simpler. Thanks for stopping by today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. See you next time.